A short little update video about my multiplexer that I demonstrated in the previous video. So people have been asking, what does multiplex maintain priority equal 1 do? And I thought I'd give it a good example. So this is normal CIRC running in an emulator with this level, and you can see that if I put my player character over these, what are they, tumbleweeds animating bushes or whatever, the player character flips in front and behind of the bushes even when I'm not changing my vertical position, and it's not consistent. Sometimes the player appears in front and sometimes appears behind when they should be just behind or in front consistently. And this is what you get with general purpose multiplexers. Because it's reusing the sprites, and the Commodore 64 sprites have a set priority order, sometimes, because there are lots of bullets up at the top of the screen, sometimes it chooses different sprite numbers to represent the visible sprites. And this is what we get when we just have the general purpose multiplexer enabled in my CIRC Redux engine. You can see that there are 6 sprites up at the top in this particular frame, and there are 3 more in the middle and then 2 at the bottom. And the player character flips in front and behind of these animating tumbleweed bush things. And that's because a different number of sprites gets chosen for the top of the screen, and then down below it affects the sprite ordering that goes further and further down the screen. But when multiplex maintain priority is enabled, then we get consistent, or we should get consistent, ordering of the player character with respect to the other objects that are on the screen. So the player character should always be consistently in front or behind of objects that are above or below the player character. And you see now that's what we have. The player character and the bushes are no longer flipping around, and the player, if the player is underneath the bush, then it will appear in front, and if the player is above the bush, it will appear behind, or tumbleweed rather. And that's what we get with this build parameter, if you like. Now, this build parameter changes the mechanism of the multiplexer so that it tries its best to maintain the priority of the sprites. Now you can see that actually the multiplexer is pretty much just as strong as it was before. There's only a very slight little tweak in terms of how efficient the multiplexer is, but generally speaking, in like 99.9% of the cases, the multiplexer is exactly as optimal as before. You can see that there's quite a number of sprites there on the screen. I think it was like 14 or 15 or something like that. So we don't need to worry too much about turning it on, but it's an option because it uses a bit more code. Actually, it uses quite a bit more code, but it's not that complex. So we can we can enable the second player as well just by tweaking the joystick settings in the emulator, and we can see that the second player as well as the first player are still consistent with respect to their vertical ordering for the animating tumbleweeds there, even though we've got the bullets up at the top, or the arrows rather. You'll also notice that the arrows from the enemy on the far right hand side of the screen appear consistently in front of, from our perspective, the enemy that's further to the left of the screen. If we go back to the title screen, you can see that the maintain priority flag really doesn't affect the efficiency of the multiplexer. We can still have all of these balls. So that was just a very short video just to go over this build parameter and to give a few examples of how well it can work in your game.